this. Look at the pickup. Look at the turn. Oh, that was brilliant, Luke Bruce.
Lewis runs into the open goal. Thank you very much. The Hawks are back in town.
And he finishes more. He can with his fourth. He's had a day out.
Scrimshaw, half the seas, went for home and nails it.
They'll just set it up, looking for the high flyers. And Sicily soaring through the skies.
For Warpino to finish it all off.
Hello and welcome, Hawks fans. Thank you for joining us on the eve of a very significant election as members decide upon not only the makeup of the club's board, but importantly, the next president of the Hawthorn Football Club. It's between two candidates, Peter Nankivell and Andy Gowers, and we were delighted to have both of them join us on the podcast to discuss their respective views and visions for Hawthorn. You're listening to one of two election specials, and this one features our chat with Peter Nankivell as I welcome the other half of the Hawk Talk podcast. G'day, Tiz.
G'day, mate. Yeah, well, it's incredible that we've got this access, and it was great to be able to have these chats about some of the big critical moments that are coming for the Hawthorn Footy Club in the next 18 months, 5 years. Yeah, it's a very pivotal moment.
It's a very intriguing time. A number of big ticket items, Tassie, Dingley, connection with members, First Nations players. There's no shortage of things to talk about, and certainly was an interesting and very insightful chat with Peter. Enjoy. Peter, good evening, and thank you so much for joining the Hawk Talk podcast. Now, the past year has been incredibly significant for the club, marked most notably, of course, by the installation of Sam Mitchell as senior coach. I was wondering if you could give us some insight into the club's key success stories over the past 12 months.
I should say, Nick and Tiz, thank you very much for having me on. And delighted to be on. And I think you're right. There's no bigger decision that a football club makes than to change coaches. And we took that bold decision to change coaches at the end of last season, and for Sam to come in and in effect look to remodel the football program. In terms of and the question is a great one, because we've at the club, in terms of the football department, we as a club have had our own measures of success, and it doesn't just equate to winning on the field. We knew that with the list profile that we had, that it was going to be, to put it bluntly, to win more games than we lost. But what we did as a board, endorse the football club and endorse the football department to really articulate and then measure what were the metrics of success. And I think that there's a couple that I could probably call out, and I think that sort of illuminate sort of where we think success, team success will come from. We can talk about some individual successes as well. So we went young, as you guys know, and we've selected on average, I think it's 13.5 players, 23 or under through the home and away season, and that's the highest in the competition. That's a really big, and there are other teams that have age lists that are much older. So, but to be at the younger end. So when you do that,
we also saw them play in the senior side too.
Correct. Well, that was my next point. We debuted 8 players, and that's the second highest in the competition in terms of debutants. All 5 players we drafted in season 2021 at the end of the season, played in 2022. So, and we've gone back and checked the records. We can't see that hasn't happened for 20 years. And I think that from a quality perspective, what we also took as a sign of success is that in the 23 and under cohort, we had 10 players with champion data performance rankings of 9 or above. The next team had 5 players in that group. So as you can see, from those types of sort of team-related metrics, that's what we consider success to be, to getting those younger players into the team and getting games into them. And then in terms of the individual successes, there were many, but I think you could see players like Dylan Moore, who completely turned themselves around from a guy that was potentially almost delisted as a couple of seasons ago to then become the player that he was. I mean, that hard tackling, small, mid, or forward was just invaluable. And his outputs were incredible. And I think you saw that reflected in the best and fairest. So that's just an example of
all part of the plan, Peter, was it?
Well, you'll have to get Dylan on and ask him.
Happy to.
It's one of those moments, though. It was a hard decision to delist or keep him on, and I wonder how much deliberation was there over the Clarko decision, and how does that work within the club and the board? How does that?
The decision in relation to Alistair was really difficult, and those decisions are not taken lightly. I'm probably rolling back into history a bit, but in terms of the way that this all came to pass is that that Alistair came to us pretty early in the piece and said, would we be renewing his contract? Because if we weren't, he wanted to know, and so that he could plan his life out. So that brought the decision onto us, and that decision, that was a decision that it was a hard decision the board had to make, and we made that in the context that we believe that we had a succession plan in place, and Alistair was part of that succession plan, in terms of bringing Sam back from Western Australia. So Sam had come back into our system, had taken over the reins at Box Hill, and so it was a plan. And now, in terms of how it was executed, it was clearly an uncomfortable time when you are exiting a senior revered coach like Sam, Alistair, like a legendary coach. And then with Sam, but I think that in terms of whilst it was difficult at the time, I think all Hawthorn supporters would be really happy with what has been delivered and what Sam has brought to the club, and the senior coach role has just been remarkable.
Well, we're enjoying the renewal of the football department, aren't we, Nick?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask, following off the, talking up the success stories, is I suppose I was curious about some of the things that the board might consider still works in progress, maybe areas in which you might have liked to have seen a bit more done throughout the last 12 months, maybe some of the challenges going forward. Could you just speak to us a bit about those?
There are always challenges at a club and in a football department. I think that the one challenge that we have had is a premises challenge, and that is with Waverley Park, or Bunjalbagora, formerly a best of breed elite training and administration facility, elite training facility, is no longer elite. Far from it. If you guys have been out there lately, you'd see that for us to be able to bring in an AFLW team was we had to sort of try to retrofit in change rooms. That it's not ideal, and I think that we want to, as part of our commitment to our players, give them the best possible chance of success. So we think if suboptimal facilities was a challenge for us.
Well, we'll certainly get onto the Dingley stuff in due course. But I think one of the things that certainly none of the members could have possibly anticipated being a challenge for the club is, of course, revelations around the treatment of First Nations players. Now, given these revelations, it started with Cyril Rioli earlier this year, and the pending investigation, of course, into the treatment of First Nations players and families. There are some who have suggested that Hawthorn no longer has a claim to the title of the family club. What's your approach when it comes to that perception?
The cultural safety review, you're right, has proven to be a challenging time for the club and the board and the players and our members, and we are all hurting and feeling that. But what I won't do as a leader at the club is sort of step away from the commitment to the welfare of our people, past and present at the club. And if you ask the question, you're not always going to get the answer that you want. But as an organisation, we've got to be open and honest and take responsibility. Mm-hmm. So that sort of rolls forward. There is an AFL investigation. We're committed to it. All to the extent that parties participate, they will have the opportunity to be heard and tell their version of events. I mean, there would not be a Hawthorn supporter that would feel nothing but utter sadness at the thought that Cyril Rioli is disengaged from the club and at this stage and doesn't feel comfortable to come back. So that that's a key step to be taken to help the process to get Cyril back to the club on terms that he feels comfortable with, and we'll all be working very hard to make that happen.
Oh, I'd love to see Cyril back in the four walls, and also Clarko and Fags, and there's so many parties in this. Is Hawthorn? Would we be liable at any point? I know this is your area of expertise, and what are the ramifications for us going forward in terms of being sued, or the AFL might deem fit to punish us in some way?
Tiz, I've got to be a little bit careful what I say here.
Okay.
I'm as one of the board members responsible for leading the club's response to these allegations and the AFL independent investigation. The investigation, as I mentioned, we're committed to it. We're participating in it wholeheartedly. The issues of sanctions, liabilities, at this stage, I'd say they're hypothetical, and that's probably as far as I can take it at this point.
The investigation, as you know, we're discussing, is ongoing, of course, and I think regardless of the outcomes, though, it's undoubtedly elevated cultural safety as a prominent issue. What sorts of things are in place, given all that? Because I think it is, in part, an election issue as well. People want to know what sort of plan or things are in place going forward. I just wonder at this point if there are discussions, or have there been discussions around that, and if you could enlighten members as to what the plans might be going forward.
Sure. I think that we've come a long way as a club, I think, and as an industry, in the sense that I know from around 2017, from memory, it might be 2017 or 2018, we actually implemented the first steps of our reconciliation action plan. Mm-hmm. So Sean Burgoyne, took us on that journey, and so we started as the first steps, and then we've since working up and working out and developing that reconciliation action plan in accordance with our program, and that's not just football department. That's like across the club. So we're all committed very, very much to that process. The cultural safety review did cover off both past and current players, mm-hmm. and so that review did note that culturally the the current players feel culturally safe. Now that's not enough. We have to develop up our First Nations programs to be aspirational, that we're actually going to get better constantly and evolve as the expectations of that communities evolve. And you guys know, as commentators on the AFL, that the AFL industry is often leads these social initiatives, and I think that there's a real role for us to play. I mean, I think things like a general manager with responsibility for First Nations players and issues would be a great initiative. The ability to bring people onto the board in due course with particular portfolio responsibilities. The first step might be develop or broadening out the charter for our people and culture. Interestingly, organisation-wide, we're actually already doing. I mentioned the RAP, but we're also doing cultural awareness trainings and decolonisation seminars and the like. And this is the whole organisation, from the board through to the people in accounts. We've started the journey.
Yeah, I certainly don't envy the board after they receive that report, but I think you're right in trying to look at the opportunity in this this dark period. I think Hawthorn and the AFL industry really can make a big difference, and they've certainly elevated a lot of people.
Agreed.
Now, transparency around that is excellent as far as members are concerned. Everyone wants to be clued into what's going on. We touched on this topic before. Dingley. We're on the move to Dingley. Now, communication to members on this, I would say, in my opinion, has probably been a bit vague of late. I think we hear with regularity that it's the biggest, most exciting project in the club's history. It certainly seems like it. I'm excited for it. But I feel like the timeline has become a bit ambiguous in the eyes of members. So how's it all coming along, and when do the club expect to be actually fully settled in there?
He's got a bit of a vested interest here. He wants to buy a house right near it, and he needs to know he needs to know when to move in by.
Mate, my generation not looking at houses. I'll tell you that right now.
Well, Nick and Tiz, I can let you in on a little bit of a secret. That a number of our players are buying. In the
no
south.
wonder we haven't got any opportunity.
Buying in the area just to the end of South Road, so they can get on South Road and go straight down South Road, pick up the Dingley bypass, and 4 sets of lights later they're at the KCC. So yeah, it's this project began as a decision of the board in 2013 that Waverley was no longer going to be the long-term future of the Hawthorn Football Club, because we realised at that point that the way that the facility had been designed out, that we were capacity constrained with the houses around, the restrictions around lighting, the inability to play games, even sort of any practice matches. So we started on that journey then, and we identified in 2014 the site at Dingley, the 27 hectares, and that was then that was purchased, negotiated and purchased in around 2015, and then with a long due diligence period, because it was part of the land is reclaimed landfill. So the due diligence process was 18 months long to make sure that it was.
I remember going to the AGMs and they'd have a report on the soil, and that was very interesting.
So yeah, we had to make sure it was fit for purpose. So the reason I'm giving you the background is that it's this project has been so carefully managed every step of the way, and then the next sort of hurdle, but it was we obviously knew that we had to do was. This land is green wedge, and so we then had to get a planning scheme amendment through, and we were confident that we would get it through because of the nature of the use that we were applying, and so we got that, and so that pushed it out. Then we hit COVID, then that, in terms of going out to the members and looking to raise funds, we paused it. It was the right thing to do. Since sort of we've come out of COVID, we did use that time to really refresh our thinking about this project, and that was driven principally by our commitment to our women's football programs. And so we, in our discussions with the three levels of government, made it very clear that we wanted to build not just an elite training and administration facility for our men's program, but we wanted to build a facility that would be elite and entirely appropriate for our women's program. So that meant that we did redevelop our thinking. So where have we got to? We've got to a stage now where we are literally on the cusp of signing a building contract, and my expectation is that will happen very, very soon. That would mean that with the builder committed and our signature on the contract, the timeline would see mid-2024 that the Harris Elite Training and Administration Facility and the AFLW community facility open. So it's interesting at the moment, and we haven't necessarily had too much in the way of pictures of this out there, but we've actually started civil works already. So you can actually see, if you go past the land, you can actually see where the ovals will be and where the elite training and administration facility. So it's actually forming up really well, and so we're super excited about that. And we're talking about this is a real game changer for our club, because we're going to have a place where we can actually all go to.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether you guys have ever tried to park it, but it's tough. So we'll be able to actually have all of those family days, have all of the open trainings, everything will, and people will be able to park and get there. And so and this is our stage one, because the beauty about having 27 hectares is you've actually got the opportunity to move to further stages. And there's another significant community element to the second stage, or stage two, which is building a highball arena and sports facility for basketball, netball, volleyball and the like. And at that point, we should also be able to bring in our ancillary medical centre. So we'll actually have on site a medical facility as well.
Wow, so that's huge.
It's so exciting.
You're really developing that community around you as well.
Correct. And I think that, and this is, I don't really want to stray into politics on this call, other than to say, it's amazing the vision of the board to buy this piece of land in the southeast, with all that's going on around it in terms of suburban rail loops and chain of parks and recreation precincts and the like. So there's no doubt, we are absolutely in the right spot.
Now, Peter, you mentioned politics. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that to you. But I do want to talk about this idea of home, because everything you mentioned about Dingley just there, it does give rise to this idea of home and everyone gathered under the one place, which incidentally will certainly, if anyone has any doubts about the family club mantle, that's going to restore that quick smart. But our home away from home, Tassie, there might be a point coming soon where the state gets its own team, and what happens from there, who knows? But it seems as though Hawthorn's happy to have that relationship for as long as we're welcome, team or no team. Does that kind of sum things up from a Hawthorn perspective?
Yes, it does. And I think I'd go so far as to say that for 22 years, we've been playing games in Tasmania, Launceston, and that has been a wonderful relationship, a partnership with the state of Tasmania. the economic and community and tourism advantages for the state have been incredible for us. We've turned it, as you guys know, we've turned it into a bit of a fortress. Even our win-loss ratios, even as our forms dip, we've still maintained a really good winning ratio down there. So the answer is, we will leave, but we'll leave sadly and reluctantly. But everything comes to an end, and we have to be respectful to the community that supported us as they embark upon a initiative, through their government in particular, to develop a true Tasmanian team, which I think is as a foundation football state is wonderful, and our board has endorsed wholeheartedly our the 19th team. We've communicated that to the AFL. Mm-hmm. I think we've actually got a bit of runway here in terms of going into season 2023. I think the team start is being talked about for 2027, might be 2028. So for us to be able to have that time to look to find another major partner, because Tasmania clearly won't be our major partner, but also to work with the stakeholders being the AFL, the state of Tasmania, and also if we play in the north, the city of Launceston, to see what can be done, because we've got 8,000 members, loyal Tasmanian members who
you can't just up sticks, can you? You got to, they want to be involved with the club still, and
we want them to be part of the club. So we'll do whatever we can to look to maintain a presence down there. And that's now what that precisely looks like in terms of playing games for points down there, or whether it's preseason camps, or whether it's practice matches or AFLW, or whatever it's going to be, we'll look to maintain that in some form.
As I look at it, Hawthorn's revenue streams are becoming quite constrained. We've got to find a major new sponsor after Tassie. The Pokies have been sold off, which was demanded about this time last year and was then followed through. It just looks like financially, I don't know, when's that released? That's released before the AGM.
Yeah, the annual report will be out. I thought it was going to be last Friday. I think it'll be probably Tuesday next week. So that comes out ahead of and I think you'll see in terms of the surplus, as you can imagine, it's going to be significant, having booked the sale of the two venues that we had, being the Gardens and the Westwaters venues. So in terms of the bold decisions the board has made, selling those venues and moving out of gaming has been done. And I should say, we started work on this a couple of years ago. These transactions were great outcomes for the club, but they just don't happen like that. There's a significant lead in, and the club and the management team executed brilliantly on those. But what that means is, you're right, we need our balance sheet will look very, very different. Our revenue lines will look very, very different. And the essence here is that those of us, and I'm a little bit older than you guys, who go back to 1996.
Oh, gee, we're mentioning 96. Oh,
I mean, it's indelibly ingrained in us that the financial security of the Hawthorn Football Club is paramount.
Oh, we looked invincible in 91, 92, 93 even, and then 3 years later, very dicey. I was at the game. I'm not that young.
But in terms of the modern DNA of the club, we have to be financially independent, and that's as a leader at the club, that's super important to me. And I think the initiatives that we had to put in place are developing a future fund, or endowment, we call it, where we actually do provide for the club in perpetuity. So we actually ring fence investments, and then we look to develop and build up that corpus and compound it, and really put that aside to ensure that we have reserves and resources that can see us through the good times and the bad. And this is in the context, as you guys know, with AFL and an equalised competition and a variable funding model. So you don't want to actually have to, and the AFL don't want this either. They don't want to have clubs that are overly reliant on variable funding. You want to be able, ideally you get the rising tide and all the boats will float up. But we've actually got, what we've done 26 years or so is get ourselves into a position where we want to stay financially independent.
Will we be punished for having such a strong balance sheet from those sales, or is that just?
It's a good question. I don't think so, because what we are doing with part of the funds is actually reinvesting back into the game. And by saying that, in terms of the Kennedy Community Centre project, that's that's for the benefit of the game, because it's for with the AFLW facilities. So the other elements of the variable funding piece, I mean, includes things like the stadium deals that you do, the draws that you get. I mean, they all go into the mix, and the AFL has its formulas. And it does follow that, when you're in the bottom, say, quartile, or the bottom six in the league, that
you play at Sunday at 4 o'clock.
So these things are designed to even out. Am I expecting the AFL to punish us for restructuring our balance sheets to get ourselves into this position? No.
Now, Peter, Hawthorn fans, I feel, I think as a podcast we have a unique position of always being plugged into social media and having our fingers on the pulse of, what people are thinking in our own unique way. I feel like Hawthorn fans have an understanding of where the team is at under Sam Mitchell. I think we're beginning this build towards premiership success again. It's going to take some time. We know this. There's things we want from our team. We want wins. We want progress. We want pride. We want a sense of belief that we're headed in the right direction. That's all demonstrated on field to the common fan. As far as off-field matters are concerned, what do you feel Hawthorn members want from their board?
I think what Hawthorn members want is a diverse, modern board that represents the wants and needs of the membership. And I think that the diversity piece is incredibly important. We've got two really strong candidates for the board, existing board members being Katie Hudson and Anne-Marie Palazat. Katie on the finance side, Anne-Marie Dr. Anne-Marie on history and traditions, and also with her medical skills. Mm-hmm. And we're also looking to bring in another female director. So I think that the diversity piece is really important. I think succession as well, and having a really, I call it a bit the Hawthorn way, that you actually bring people into the club and people volunteer to serve. And it's an honour to serve at a club like Hawthorn. And you go through committees, and you go through coteries, committees, and you serve the club. And it's at that point that whether you become a board member or not, it doesn't really matter. It's that element of service. I think the other thing that I expect that off-field that the members will want to see is having a board that is skills-based, with the right experience, providing sort of continuity, and with those big decisions that we've made, and we're not going to talk about football. We can talk about football program again, but KCC, the sale of the game, they're all huge decisions, and to actually have the continuity of decision making with people who know how the club works, that's really, really important. Because I think it's a cliche, but if you've got a dysfunctional board, it makes winning a premiership very, very hard. There's no guarantee if you've got a highly functioning board that you will win one, but the reverse definitely applies.
Now, Peter, we couldn't go this call without mentioning Jeff Kennett. He had to come up at some point.
Do you have a Twitter account, Peter?
No, I have a very, very small social media footprint. I think LinkedIn is about the extent of mine.
That might be music to some members' ears. we know of Jeff, obviously. He's an outspoken figure, for better or worse. We know by now, at the end of his second run as president, what to expect from him. We know who he is, his personality, his general temperament. Members are much less acquainted with Peter Nankivell. So, what sorts of qualities are you hoping to bring to the presidency, and what would be your priorities?
Well, I'm very different to Jeff. My style is much more a consensus style, and Jeff has, as you guys mentioned, 2 terms, one of 6 years, one of 5 years, as an extremely strong president, and in the sense that he has that sort of executive chairman type approach to the presidency. I think my approach would be a much more traditional approach in terms of what I would, how I would carry myself and the board. And I think that the idea is my approach is to seek that consensus, and then to act, clearly and deliberately on the agreed position. And I think that I've been in my working life as a lawyer and also in business now. Have been lucky enough to be in leadership positions, and I think that consensus style has served me well. In terms of what are my priorities in sort of early in the piece, and we've got those big ones that we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. But I think that more immediately, I think we as a club have paid a bit of a price, and I think the industry did too, but I think the Hawks, for the last 2 years and COVID and 81,000 members, we've got to develop some initiatives to engage the 25, to engage our members, but as a starting point, I think there's over 25 plus supporter groups in the club, formal and informal, and I could see, I could see myself and another director or two or CEO just getting out and doing a fair bit of listening, just to hear what people have to say about their club. And I think and you guys get it because of what you do, and we and your commentary on the club is that it's an incredibly diverse, broad church. As an institution. We have a remarkable array of stakeholders and no one is more important than anybody else. Mm-hmm. And that's the way that I want the club to be regarded by its members. And I think so. I mentioned before, I mentioned about engaging with those 25 plus supporter groups. I think there's also the opportunity to use technology, and we joked about it before, a little more, in the sense that I think we've all become particularly, a much more sort of Zoom friendly, or let's say, the ability to actually real-time communications from the club through to the supporters about issues, and with the opportunity to seek feedback. I think there's some things I would say as sort of first up steps in terms of communication would be really valuable to me.
Because there's some enormous amount of hours that people volunteer on the board, like yourself, and have for many years. And unless you attend the AGMs, you don't see the impact of those people, really.
That's right. It's a really good point, Tiz, because I think that getting to know the board a bit more and what the skills are. I just like, without meaning to turn this into an advertisement for my fellow board members, but we've got board members who are the best in their industries, in accounting, finance, law, construction, fundraising, medical. I'm going to miss somebody. Digital businesses. So these are the sort of people that we're all volunteers. We all love the Hawthorn Football Club. We do it because we think we can make a difference. And that's as I said, it's an honour to serve, and we're thrilled to do it.
Now, in my research ahead of our chat this evening, it said that you're looking at just the one term spanning 3 years. If that's accurate, could you just give us a bit of an insight into your thinking there? Yes,
sure, Nick. I think that the way that I sort of came into this opportunity was that I wasn't going to offer myself to the board or to the club to serve 2 terms. I've been on the board for 8 years. If I'm lucky enough to be elected as the president of the Hawthorn Football Club, that would make 11 years. And to my mind, that's enough. I think that the 3-year term is actually, from my point of view, I think it's a real challenge, because there's so much that I want to get done and seen through. I really want to get this Kennedy Community Centre up and going, and maybe getting into stage 2 of it and see that through. I really want to see the outcome of our exiting out of gaming embedded into the club, so far as the future fund, and whether that could also involve some constitutional reform to embed those, some liquidity protections into the. So I'd like to see that through, and I think we all want to see what happens on the football teams, because I want to see Beck Goddard and the AFLW team. Really, what they did this year was amazing. I want to see them continue to develop, and I think with Sam Mitchell and his coaches and the football team, I'm of a view, it's not if, it's when. In terms of, I'm pretty bullish about that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'm on exactly the same page. We need to talk about your opponent, of course. This is, after all, an election. The presidency is set to be contested between 2 Hawthorn people, 2 people who share a passion for this great club, this brown and gold club, and who are vying to push the team towards success. You and your opponent, Andy Gowers, you have that in common. That's great. Where do you feel you might diverge in your respective visions for the Hawthorn Football Club?
That's a really good question, because I've met with Andy, and in terms of those bigger ticket items, I don't think there is a lot of I don't think there is a lot of difference. I think there's I think it's going to be about how we execute on them, and I think that we've got those. And I think that in terms of the incumbency and having the experience and the background on what to do to get these major, in particular the building projects, across to the next stage, I think that that's a positive in my favour in terms of incumbency. Mm-hmm. But in terms of Andy and the Hawks for Change sort of model. I've asked Andy, what are we doing wrong and what do you want changed? Mm-hmm. There's not a lot in terms of the fundamentals at the footy club.
I suppose that's something that me, individually, I was curious about That's something that through the media, for me, to this point, hasn't shone through. So I thought I'd pitch that question to you.
One of the things Andy Gowers is critical of is our relationship and the lack of funding we received from the state government over the course of the last couple of years, and he sees himself as being able to nurture that better.
I'd like to think that, Jeff, there's no doubt Jeff's been an outspoken critic of the state, of the Labor government. I don't really want to buy into the politics, other than to say that our dealings with the state government have been incredibly positive in terms of the government departments and those areas of government that actually have responsibility for assessing these projects, in particular the Kennedy Community Centre projects, and this sort of the civil and community element to this. And the fact that we're actually sitting in as a line item in the state balance sheet and in the contingency section for state funding, I take as a huge vote of confidence that the state will look to support our project, personalities aside.
When was Albanese out of the club, Nick? Was that last year?
I think we've had a few visitors from both sides, actually. It's hard to keep it straight.
I was out there when Elbow came out there, and I was also out there when Frydenberg came out there. So you're right, they've both kicked footies out on the site.
I'm pretty sure there's footage of Albo at the Corner Hotel singing the club song. I don't know if that was after a flag or something, but...
He actually is a Hawthorn supporter.
Yeah, Nick got a bit aggrieved when he saw him in a Geelong scarf.
Look, I get it, but I still don't like it. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Now, Peter, you're obviously familiar with the Hawks for Change platform and what they're about. They're a vocal segment of the supporter base of Hawthorn members that object to certain things they've seen, heard, read over the last few years in particular. How do you go about reassuring them to stay on this path and afford you their vote?
I think that the Hawks for Change group, I think, are one of many engaged stakeholders at the football club, and I think that they've demonstrated a particular passion and a particular a way of that they want to approach the current governance of the club with the board elections and the president elections. But I think that getting back to what I said before, I would dearly like to be able to sort of sit down with the representatives from the Hawks for Change and hear them out as we can with all stakeholders of the club, and to the extent they've got constructive suggestions and improvements and the like, we work together to develop these out.
Because it's really an umbrella group, Hawthorn, isn't it? And it's just whoever wants to be part of it can be. And I just don't like the idea that we have this kind of friction when we all want to make the club so much better. We don't want to lose the talent due to,
Yeah, well, it sort of is. You're right. It impacts the diversity piece that we try and build into the club. It impacts the skills piece we try and build into the club. And if there's one thing that I've learned from my time as a football club administrator is that representative boards don't work on football clubs, in the sense that to have a board that represents particular segments of the football club, whether it's past players, whether it's a strong coterie, whether it just leads, to your point, leads to too much friction. You're much better to have that the independent skills-based board pulling together.
So with objectives rather than agendas.
Correct.
We're about to wrap up. We're headed for an election. Now, Peter, those go one of two ways. In the case of defeat, what happens next? What's your relationship with the Hawthorn Football Club in the instance that happens?
I think my relationship with the Hawthorn Football Club will be like it has been for 55 years. I will lose myself in the 2 hours of or 2.5 hours of football on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, whenever we play. Listen, I remain a committed fan, and I think that my love for the club, my passion for it will remain unabated.
Which was the first premiership you attended, Peter?
I attended 1971.
You're quite young, I imagine.
I was only 9 years old.
Do you recall it?
Yeah, I do, because I was sitting so far up on the Olympic stand, it was like little ants running around.
Oh, that's like the footage.
Now, how about this? 71 and at least a premiership a decade since. What a life.
I know. Well, I think that, in all seriousness, I think that in terms of the lottery of life, without standing too profound here, I think to be actually, born and to live in Australia is, it's an incredible country, and we're so lucky. But I think for those of us that are Melbourne-based, or it doesn't have to be Melbourne-based, you can be a Hawk supporter or wherever, but for those of us that have come through supporting the Hawthorn Football Club for decades, we're lucky enough to support one of the most successful sporting franchises anywhere in the world in an equalised competition. We're truly blessed.
I think you timed your run magnificently.
Now, let's get to the flip side, right? Let's say that it goes your way and you win the election and you take up the presidency of the Hawthorn Football Club. What excites you most about the prospect of leading the Hawthorn Football Club?
I think that for me, I've always been of the view that it's an honour to serve, and I think that this is and at a personal level, it would be a huge thrill, in terms of that opportunity to give back to the club that has given so much to me. That's at a personal level, that's really exciting. At an organisation level, it's really to see some of those initiatives come through. But for me, it's ultimately about the people, and to lead a team of people that I've got to know over in particular 8 years at the Hawthorn Football Club, who are so passionate and who are so committed, and who all want the best for the club. And I'm talking about about the management, about the staff, about the players, about the volunteers. That's really humbling.
Well, Peter, myself and Tiz would like to thank you for your time. Most generous, and on behalf of all Hawthorn members as well, thanking you for your time and to have you say. Good luck for December.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks, Tiz.
And that's one of our election specials, Tiz. Would like to extend once again a massive thanks to Peter Nankivell for giving his time to chat to us and providing some insights and some interesting tidbits in terms of his vision, his outlook for Hawthorn, what his plans are if he is indeed elected president by the members.
Yeah, it's he hasn't an answer for everything. It was I hope we got across all the issues, and it came to me to bring up revenue, which thank you for that, Nick. And always the dry stuff. No. But no, it'll be a very interesting election.
Now, to our listeners, maybe you're enjoying this via Spotify, maybe you're streaming it on Audible, or maybe you're enjoying the episode via Apple Podcasts. Now, if that is your platform of choice, why not take a few seconds to rate or review it? We'd really appreciate that. Of course, we're all over social media. That might have been how you found us. We're a hive of activity all throughout the off-season. We'd love to have you on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. It really is a community of the best, most diehard Hawk supporters out there, so get on board. Lastly, a massive thanks to our proud, passionate and paid up Patreon subscribers. You very much help make this podcast everything that it is. You help us to put time into it week after week, even when it's the off season and we thought we might have a little bit of a break. Not so. We're still putting in the time week after week. So wonderful to have our subscribers on board who help make that possible. Patreon.com/HawkTalkPod if you want to sign up and score yourself some of that sweet, sweet bonus content.
Yeah, so stay tuned for another hour of politics. Is that what we're going going for, Nick?
Well, I mean, it's all important. Like I said, this could help inform your vote and inform the new era, potentially, of the Hawthorn Football Club. So there is another episode available right now, our chat to Andy Gowers, the other candidate for the presidency of the Hawthorn Football Club. So go forth and enjoy. And, of course, we'll be back to preview the draft, which is going to be very exciting indeed. Until then, we are a happy team at Hawthorn.